Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I'm super excited to have Kitty Hart on Your Brand Amplified today. Kitty, you have been in the branding ecosphere for most of your career, right? But what you've done has changed in that. And I really love that you are the VP of Client Brand Experience at Heroic Productions. I got my start in Experiential, and that is how my entire marketing, branding, and PR career started. So I'm always excited to talk to people who live in this world. But before we get into what you do now, I'd love to hear how your career progressed to go from brand and strategy and other things into experience.
Yeah. So thank you. I'm very happy to be here today. Very nice to meet you. My career actually started in business development. And what's interesting is that even though I would call myself a corporate marketer with expertise in experiential, the seat that I've mostly sat in all of the companies that I worked for have been in business development. It just happens to be within a marketing agency, or that's been what we've been helping our clients with. So when I graduated from college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. But after a certain period of time, I knew that I wanted to go into sales. And I happened to land a really great job, a sales role at a company that was basically a marketing agency. So that basically created this trajectory for the rest of my career. So I've always worked for agencies. And then I just developed an affection for experiential. And it started when I was working for a brand design agency. You know, the work that we did was logo design and maybe packaging design, naming. And so we were always talking about the importance of designing the whole experience for a brand. So even though we were just focusing in on perhaps the name, the logo, which is just the visual representation of a brand or a package, we were always talking about what is the experience that you want to create for your customers and how does the brand live that? And then that just sent me down this road of designing experiences in total and just absolutely fell in love with it.
I love the nuance of what you just said, because really any touch point we have with a customer is an experience, or it should be, right?
Yes.
You don't often think about it that way. And I love that one led you to another. And it's designing actual in-person and I imagine virtual experiences for your client base.
Yes.
So what does that look like today? Because I know, and a lot of people who are listening might not have had a lot of experience with experiential, especially people who are younger in their careers, and the pandemic kind of shifted things for a while. And I think now we're seeing the pendulum shift back a little bit to people wanting to be in person and engage. But I'd love to talk through, what does that look like throughout your career? How has it changed and shifted?
So experiential has been around for a long time. I always want to make sure that people know that this isn't a new form of marketing. It dates back to the 1800s. So anybody on my team that will be listening to this podcast will say, oh, here's the example again, but it's such a good one. This dates back to the World's Fair and brands like Wrigley's and Cracker Jack showed up and they actually put the product into people's hands. That's a form of experiential because you're putting it into people's hands, then asking people to taste something. So now we've got taste involved. It's the senses. The best experiences are designed with all of the senses in mind. So I say that to just simply point out to the fact that this is not a new form of marketing, but it's become more and more important over the last few decades because we are so digitally focused. And you're absolutely right that even though we are digitally focused, people still want to have a physical experience with the brand. So I think the biggest evolution is that brands have to be more and more creative to create those experiences. Because let's be honest, it's hard to surprise and delight people in the world that we live in today.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, I think back. So I was telling you a little bit via email, and then before we jumped on to the actual interview, that my background I started out promoting clubs and DJs and events, and then creating my own events, and then realizing I wanted to create more connection points. So we would do a newsletter and not just see people at parties, right? Or club nights, but then let's bring people together for dinners and for other experiences. So it's something that I've always been really passionate about because that's where you feel this energy of connection, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I did that for magazines starting, before the internet was really the internet. And then I remember going into AOL chat rooms for music lovers to find people who wanted to help promote a music magazine I was working on. And to be part of our in-person events when we would go to different cities. So I'd send them little swag bags with flyers and stickers and magazines and stuff to give away, and then come to our live event here and listen to these DJs. And then figuring out how to incorporate our advertisers into it. So it's something really fun. And it also is where I really cut my teeth and then was able to move into other areas. So almost like the opposite trajectory of your own experience.
Yeah, interesting. I love that.
So that's why I always love talking to people who are in this, because I feel like because we are so digitally focused, because we see so much content, tens of thousands of marketing messages a day when we're just looking at our email or going onto social media or whatever, or watching something on TV or listening to a podcast even, right? We're bombarded with all these messages. So I feel like that touch points, like you talked about, experiential is not something new. It's been around for a long time. I feel like that's becoming more important, thinking about other ways to reach audiences that are what's old is new again, in a way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the work that we do at Heroic, so we are a corporate event production company. So we're working with that corporations meetings and events teams when they're looking to bring, their hundreds or thousands of their employees together for a 1-day meeting or a 3-day meeting, whatever it might be. Even though it's corporate focused, we always want to keep in mind that whether it's business to business or business to consumer, we're all human beings and we crave the same things. Yeah. So it's been interesting to see the evolution of the corporate event marketing as well. Because, sometimes you can have sort of an impression of, have to go to our national sales meeting again this year. Well, that is not the sentiment that you want attached to these events. You, in fact, want it to be, oh my gosh, I can't wait for January because we get to go to our next national sales meeting. So the bar is set pretty high nowadays for even these corporate events. This doesn't apply just to consumer brands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because your internal teams are your biggest publicists, your biggest brand. And so nurturing them properly is going to just keep them more invested in the mission of the company as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to look at on paper a true ROI on corporate event marketing, but what you just said is absolutely right. And so there are some ways to measure, but it's mostly in talking to people, feeling the vibe. What is the momentum after an event? Because you're right. It's all about keeping people engaged, hoping that they feel invested in the company, that they are kind of refreshed and say, okay, now that's right. I remember now why we do what we do and the importance of my role in this company and our mission. We could talk about this as a completely separate podcast topic, but I just, when we talk about experiential, I just always want people to remember that this is as much for businesses and, within their experience with their employees, as much as it is, the radical or the guerrilla marketing things that we see brands do to get attention. So many different ways that you can apply this.
So if somebody is looking at incorporating experiential, what are some of the steps that you usually walk through a client to figure out what's going to be the best experience?
Yeah. A couple of things are really, really important, first off, and that is a really clear grounding in your company. So knowing that everybody at the table who will be crafting this and working on it, they understand the brand fundamentals, the mission, the values, what's right for our brand, what's not right for our brand. That has to be, as much as the word authentic is so overused today, you have to nail that, because that's where you can completely miss the boat if you get it wrong. If you have a really conservative brand and you go way off and do something that raises eyebrows, bad. So a significant grounding in the brand fundamentals. And then also a significant grounding in knowing who your customer is. What are their needs and wants? And then, so that you are making sure that you're designing an experience that will resonate with them. Those two go hand in hand for sure. And then, start the creative process. And this is where it gets fun, I think. And the more creative people that you can have involved, the better. And I think it's helpful to bring in people from other parts of the organization to participate in these creative sessions because they touch the customers or the clients differently in different parts of the company. So that creative process is really important. Brainstorm concept things into visual form. That's really where the magic of experiential begins. And, make sure that you have an appropriate budget for these things as well. I'm a little bit less well-versed on that sort of topic, but like as far as budgets, I'm going to always be that person who'll just say, dream big, because you never know when that big idea will spur something else, from someone else in your team. Then you can dial it in to whatever is appropriate. But yeah, that creative process is so important and really shouldn't be stifled by budget constraints. You're going to get there. You're going to have to address budget at some point, but don't let that squash creativity in the beginning.
Yeah. I love that because if you have a great creative concept that you think will really resonate, there may be workarounds, right? If you don't have the really big budget that you think you need. So you can still think about ways to make it happen, or a smaller part of it can happen.
Yes. Yep.
Do you have...
So we're always encouraging people to, look at experiences like Coachella and South by Southwest and the Super Bowl. These are obviously multi-million-dollar events that they're really cool. And they are things that can simply spark an idea. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you're looking outside of your industry, outside of the creative circle that you might be in, to get inspiration from these other really, really cool experiences that people are creating.
And since the pandemic, have you seen a shift where people are saying, yes, we want to have an in-person experience, but we also want to offer it as a hybrid?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So in our experience, what happened once the restrictions were lifted and we could do in-person again, everybody went back to in-person. They're like, I never want to be on a virtual event ever again. Thank you very much. That's done. But now it's kind of coming back, but it's coming back as an extension. So mostly we're still creating that in-person event, but we're infusing in, I used to say we're tacking on. We're not tacking on. We're infusing into the experience a virtual component for either people who aren't able to travel to be there. People don't want to travel to be there. We see a lot more people doing what they want to do nowadays, right? Employees in companies are pushing back and saying, no. Yeah. Okay. Then we have a virtual experience for you that is part of the experience. Also, some companies have pulled their budgets back a little bit and they're saying, okay, we can't afford to fly everybody in. So for those regions that we can't bring in, we have this virtual experience for you. So it is important to still be thinking about those different experiences. And I don't think there's anybody in the virtual event world that would say, oh, it's no sweat. It's super easy to keep people engaged virtually. No. If there is anybody out there saying that, I would love to talk with them because they've clearly got a multi-million-dollar idea. It's not easy. And yet it's necessary today.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when things were shifting and just seeing people struggling to figure out how to move events and how to make them really robust online. And then if you have different speakers coming in, if there's a lag between speakers and all of the different technical issues that can happen.
Yes.
Events. And then I saw other people doing them really well. I think it was Adobe who did a tee up to an event for their businesses that they work with. And they had a talk show host on to help present what was going to happen at the conference. And they sent us all a little cocktail thing so we could make his favorite cocktail, like James Corden's favorite cocktail, while we watched the presentation.
Love it.
Yeah, that was something unique. Yeah. I didn't go to the in-person conference, right? But I was still, as a customer, I valued it. So I'm like, oh, I wonder how, I hope they put the same care into what they're doing for employees. So I love that you're thinking through that. Do you have a favorite client or example of an event that you've done that you can share with us?
Oh gosh, one that we've done. Okay, so fact of the matter is that a lot of the work that we do for our clients is confidential. So we've got some stories on our website. We only have a fraction of our stories on our website. So there are some examples that people can take a look at there. We were involved so I'm in Minneapolis. Our company is headquartered in Minneapolis, but the work that we do covers the country. We go all over the place. But we were able to, Minneapolis hosted the Super Bowl a few years ago, 2019 it was, Super Bowl 52. And we were so excited about winning that bid, right? This city, we have brand new stadium, US Bank Stadium's phenomenal facility. And so Heroic Productions was selected as the AV partner for Super Bowl Live, which is the whole activation that takes place up and down Nicollet Mall. So let me just remind people, this Super Bowl is always the first weekend in February, right? That's the dead of winter here in Minnesota.
I've been to Minneapolis and walked the tunnel,
Skyways. Yep.
I've had the experience of, okay, the car is completely frozen. What do I do?
Yes. Yeah. Letting it sink in that people actually plug their cars in at night. And that was, before electric cars, when people were plugging their cars in. But yeah, so exactly. So when you were walking those skyways, US Bank Stadium is right downtown. And so Nicollet Mall is this beautiful mall area that runs straight through downtown. And that's where they set up this Super Bowl Live experience. And so there were all of these different activations, all the big brands, come out then. And, we're talking Sleep Number and Best Buy and, I'm trying to think of other brands that were there. So we were charged with all of the lighting, AV support for those outdoor activities. There were bands that were playing. There was a ski slope that was put in. Who was the snowmobiler? Levi, I'm drawing a blank on his last name. He drove his snowmobile over this ski lift, and did flips over the audience. Now, after the fact, our team can say that was an amazing event to support. At the time, I'm not sure people were raving about it, just simply because of how cold it was. But I think that because you're so incredibly important within that experience. The lighting, the audio, when you're setting up for those bands that are out there, if anything doesn't work, you're done. So the pressure is high. And also just to be involved in such a high profile event and one that our city can be so proud of. Yeah. Phenomenal.
Oh, I love that. I can see the joy radiating through you right now. So thank you for doing that. And you answered my next question, which is going to be, do you work only in your area or do you work with people all over? So
all over. The reality of it is that, so even if our clients are based here, they're usually doing events somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes it will be a national sales meeting. It'll be an incentive trip. It'll be a product launch. They typically want to take people to a location that, the location itself is really special. Not that there aren't really awesome places here, but, they're wanting to take people to Phoenix or Orlando or Atlanta, Hawaii, So, all over. And so we've got very effective ways of either trucking our gear and equipment there, or we have such an extensive network that whatever city we're in, we can source what is needed in order to make the most of our client's budget.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. You also, I know, mentioned that you have primarily been in a business development, a sales role. That's something that you really wanted to do, and it's something you're able to weave into the work you do.
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Do you think that the clients that you work with are looking for different things when they're looking to make a purchasing decision about your services? Have you seen that change during the course of your career? And also on the other side, you did talk about how we sell to consumers. And I think the way that brands have to approach consumers is also different now.
Yes. So I'll answer that in a couple of ways. If you look at the companies that I've worked for and the roles being business development in each of them, I've sold, like, the deliverable has been different for each one of those companies. Mm-hmm. So when I was at the brand design agency, we were selling brand assets. We were selling logos and package design. And then at the experiential agency, I was selling branded environments. Here at Heroic, I'm selling a corporate event production. Mm-hmm. But the common thread through all of those is an experience that connects people with the brands. Both. So that foundation is the same. It just happens to be a different deliverable. Mm-hmm. And so I found what has been really effective for me, and I think the reason that I've been successful in my sales career, is that I'm not selling you this tangible, here are some readers. This is Power 1.5. We have a tortoiseshell design. It's not that. We're selling the end result of people and brands coming together and connecting because of something real and meaningful, and that comes from the fact that people want to feel something. Right. So the second question was, has that changed? And how is it different with selling to consumers? Right. The fact of the matter is that the way people buy today has changed dramatically. And it's not just because of the pandemic, but it's truly because of the rise of technology. And so I speak on this topic a lot. If you haven't changed the way you sell, you're probably having a really hard time selling. So it's one of the reasons why experiential is so important for that specific type of interaction. But in a business to business situation where I'm prospecting, when I'm talking to a prospective client, I look at them not as a business buyer, but I look at them as a human being. And I have to think about, okay, what is the process that they're going through to make this decision? Even though they're making a buying decision for their company, it doesn't matter. They're going to go through the same process. They're going to do some research. They're going to ask friends for referrals. And they're probably going to want to go as far into that sales process as possible before they talk to me. Mm-hmm. It's just the way people are today. Wow. One of the reasons why, when people say, oh, you're a salesperson, how do you do that? Well, the profession of being a salesperson has sort of gotten a bad rap over many, many years. And it goes back to the old traditional door-to-door salesman, the pushy car salesman, that stereotype. Well, that's not how people buy today. Yeah. That's certainly not how we sell.
I'm going to flag that. I feel like the new equivalent of the door-to-door salesperson, the pushy salesperson, is the LinkedIn inbox.
Oh,
people who blind DM or connect because they, to share resources, but then as soon as you connect, they just are trying to sell you services. They haven't really paid attention to who you are. Like you said, they're not paying attention to what you're putting out there. Mm-hmm. They're just trying to send out as many as possible in the hopes that somebody bites.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And what happens, you probably ignore the message, you archive it, you mark it as spam, you might disconnect from the person. And that's exactly what we do in our offices. So when you get a voicemail from somebody trying to sell you something, you know nothing about them or the product or service, you don't even know that you need it. It's a complete cold call, probably not even going to return the call. We have these devices, right? We have our phones and we're screening all the time. If I get a call and it's an unrecognized number, I don't even answer it. Mm-hmm. So as salespeople, we have to have different ways to reach people today. And the best way to do that is through a referral. Who do you know that uses our services, and would you be willing to make an introduction? Right. Yes, that breaks down a wall immediately. Cool. So today it's just more about relationship.
Yeah. And we want to buy because we trust you, because other people have told us that we can trust you. And then you've shown us that trust. Right.
Yeah.
I feel like two things that people are really scared of are public speaking, which I love saying, well, but anytime you're having an interaction, even at the grocery store, you're public speaking. So you shouldn't be afraid of it,
That's true.
And then sales, right? People are really scared of sales. They're like, oh, I'm not a natural salesperson. So what are some tips that you would give somebody who is looking at making sales their career.
Huh? Yeah. I've been in situations before, companies that I worked at, where there have been my colleagues who aren't salespeople, like their role is not a salesperson, but yet they are client facing. And we get into the course of working on the project and something happens scope wise where all of a sudden they're like, okay, we've just identified something different that we need to do for you, client. And so in the past, challenged my team to say, okay, you're identifying a need there. Right. So in that moment, you need to be confident to say, you know what, we've uncovered something here that we should dig into a little bit. And this is out of scope. So we're going to need more time. We'll have to apply some budget to this, change order, et cetera. And they hold their hands up and they're just like, these are my colleagues. They're like, I can't do that. I'm not a salesperson. And so what I would say to that, it's in that situation, as well as people who are looking to go into sales, if you really believe in your product and service, you should never feel sheepish or shy or uncomfortable offering what you do. There is tremendous value in what you do if you believe in it. And I've always 100% believed in the service, the product, the end result of what I have been selling for our clients. I'm not trying to sell somebody something that they don't need.
Right.
Ever. So when you find, look for that. If you are somebody looking for a sales role, look for something that you wholeheartedly believe in, and you will never feel like you are selling anything. I'm just a representative. And I don't mean just, but I am a matchmaker. I am finding people who need what we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really great way to frame it for somebody who's scared of the sales process, because you're right. You're not trying to sell something. You're trying to offer something somebody really needs, and you're going to make their life so much better.
I think it's empowering.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never framed it that way, but now, when I listen back to this episode and look at my show notes and everything, I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to, I need to write this down and put it somewhere I can see it when I'm having to do the sales process.
Yes. Yep.
Is there a typical company size that you work with, or budget range that they need to have, where you feel like that's really your sweet spot and you can do, maximize what you're trying to do?
So we're typically working with mid to large size companies, again, that are doing events that might range from a full day event to, 4 days or 5 days sometimes. And the budget question is a little bit hard to answer because there are so many different parameters involved. Location has a lot to do with it. Our team is really good at looking at, all right, what's the environment? What's already there? What can we capitalize on? And then how do we take it from there and create? And so I would say, it's probably challenging to do projects under 80,000. And they certainly go on up from there. We've had events, in the last year that reach 800,000. But again, those are the events that are running multiple days and, probably in a location away from Minnesota. But companies are doing those events. I mean, that's a significant initiative for them year after year. And it's even a situation where if a company decides to not do something, there's some optics around that. They're always like, well, what's that going to say? It's just like when certain companies started not showing up at trade shows. It's like, what are people going to say? We've always been an anchor at the, we've been a main attraction at this trade show. Now all of a sudden we don't go. That's a real thing. So event marketing is usually its very own line item, within a corporate marketing strategy and plan and budgeting. And it's a really, really important activity.
Yeah. And earlier you mentioned that sometimes people can't get to the in-person events. And now people are starting to really embrace the hybrid of, you're not going to get the full experience of being in person, but we have this other section that's there for you. You can watch, zoom in or whatever to certain parts of things. Are you also seeing that people are doing more like mini events, micro events throughout, so one for each region, maybe on the same day or on different days, so that they maximize their teams and their budgets?
Yeah. Yes. That's definitely something that companies can do. I don't know that we have a lot of clients who are doing that, but that would be a great way to bring teams together. And you could certainly leverage technology then to kind of bring everybody together. Or you can, there are a lot of creative ways that you can engage as a group, as small groups, and then obviously as the holistic company as well. Again, it all comes back to creative thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're seeing as a trend that you think will continue into this next phase of, uncertainty? I feel like there's so much going on in the world. We're unsure of, obviously, the environment, like whether it's raining or snowing or how weather is affecting people and whether they can travel, economy, all of those different factors. So are there things that you think we're going to keep seeing going into the next few years, or things that you've identified that maybe we wouldn't know?
Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind is that, a lot of our clients are usually bringing in some sort of talent for these events, whether it's a really notable speaker or some unexpected entertainment. And that's not new, but I think that we will continue to see that. I think the new piece of that is that over the last few years, there have been a lot of speakers, let's just say speakers specifically, that have gotten out of the business. And so we're sort of now seeing a whole influx of new talent that we're able to tap into. And they're great. They're motivational. They're funny. They do very well on stage. And then there are certain speakers that are really good virtual speakers. Not everybody can do both. And that was a little bit of a painful lesson during the pandemic.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Not every speaker who's wonderful on stage can do the same thing in this sort of environment.
I never even thought of that. Yeah. Oh, no.
So it's been fun to see, all of these new amazing talents come forth with their messages.
Whoa.
And it's like this whole new body of entertainment that we have to select from for these events.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It's very exciting. Keeps things a little fresh and interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can feel like, oh, okay, we're going to go hear from so-and-so again.
Right.
I feel like for a while we kept hearing from the same futurist over and over again. I saw him at a few different events. Nothing against futurists. They kind of scare me a little bit. I am always a little freaked out after I hear a futurist speak. But yeah, it seemed like for a while we were hearing from a lot of the same. And now we've got lots of new, really cool, vibrant, whole new batch to select from.
Is there anything else, Kitty, that you'd like to share that my audience should think about when they're thinking about their experiential strategy?
Okay. So I'll just touch again back on the importance of, because I think a lot of times people can say, I don't even know where to start with that. I don't, first of all, what do you mean? What is an experiential? And then, they'll oftentimes will kind of, hit themselves on the forehead and go, okay, yeah, I get it. Obviously, you're designing a physical experience. You don't have to make it any more difficult than that. But then they're like, okay, well, where do I start? Start by just thinking about the senses that we have as human beings. Taste, smell, hear, these senses that make us human beings. That's where we're going to start. Think about your brand, how it connects to people. And then what sort of experience can you create that taps into even just one of those? Just pick one. There are very few brands that can wrap them all up into one experience, and that's not necessary. But think about a few of them and design for that. This is something that can be done by all brands. You don't have to be Starbucks. You don't have to be Amazon. Any brand can do this, whether you're a startup or global.
Fantastic.
So challenge your team. Put that on the marketing team. They'll appreciate the challenge.
I think so too. And it's fun to get out of your day to day and have to think differently and creatively sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll put the website obviously in the show notes, heroicproductions.com. But I'd love to hear, do you have some words of wisdom, a mantra, quote, a verse, things that help you get through the day and keep inspiring you to do what you do?
Well, something that I'm thinking about on a regular basis these days, probably over the last couple of years, I am hopeful that where I'm at right now at Heroic Productions, that this is where I kind of wrap things up career-wise. I want to be here until I'm ready to be done. I'm 56 years old, very proud of what I've done in my career. Mm-hmm. And I always want, especially when I talk to young people, I always want to instill in them, your career will unfold as it unfolds. And of course, you have to drive your own future. Right. But there's also something to just letting experiences unfold in front of you, making decisions. Am I going to go this way? Am I going to go this way? Taking risks, being challenged. Those are all really good things. And we know that change can be scary, but you will have to make hard decisions from time to time as you go through your career. But I love to tell people that it just keeps getting better. It really does just keep getting better. And so as we, those of us who are over 40 are starting to be in that age range where, let's be honest, we can start to be put out to pasture. Mm-hmm. And it's unfair. It's absolutely unfair. And I've been talking about this a lot lately with my girlfriends. I just started a podcast myself where we're talking about these issues that as women in their mid-50s are having to deal with. The fact of the matter is we have so much to offer because of all of these experiences that we've had.
And I am in the over 40. And I also think we're so much more comfortable with who we are and being able to talk about all of our lived experience and why it's important and what's on the table today. Much more so than I would have when I was younger. Yes. I laugh because I talk to people about The Golden Bachelor and I'm like, can it all just be The Golden Bachelor? Because the women on there, like, they still get emotional, but they just really know who they are. And they're not afraid to say what they need and to show up as themselves. And they're not as interested in all the fighting and all the things that happen on the regular show.
Yeah, all the drama. Yes, I know. That's funny. I've been watching it as well. Yes. And yet what has been a little disappointing to me is that they're playing into all the stereotypes of being a senior. And to that, I say shame on them for doing that. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about it in the career. Let's have respect for people who are over 50 in their career because of all they've experienced and all of that experience that comes to the table. And we're going to also have high respect for the 20-somethings that are coming into our organizations. Because when you can bring those 20-somethings and the 50s, 60s, 70s together, that's where you're going to have a really, really successful company because you need both.
Yeah, all the different perspectives. You have the lived experience, and then you have other people who are demanding a new way of working.
Yes.
Might be a little more balanced than we're used to.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. I feel like that's a whole other podcast episode that we could do.
Yeah, it is.
What is the name of your podcast so that we can share that?
It's called 3 Cocktails In, actually. I've started it with a couple of girlfriends. So it's not connected to Heroic. It's just something I'm doing on the side and we are having a blast. And we're just talking about these topics where we're just like, we're not going to apologize anymore. We're, all of these things. So it's funny and lighthearted, but we're also addressing things that I think are also on the minds of other people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
Well, this has been such a fun conversation. Kitty, thank you so much for being here. I know that there's so many nuggets to take out of this conversation that will be in the transcript and the show notes. I will also lift up your podcast if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It sounds really fun and it definitely sounds like something I want to listen to. Yeah. So thank you for being here. Thank you to our viewers and listeners for coming back for another episode, another amazing guest on Your Brand Amplified. I'm Annika Jackson, and I'll be back again in a few days with another expert. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at Amplify with Annika.